8 months ago, my husband and I sold all our stuff, packed up our life, and resettled down in Mexico. So in this video, I'm going to be telling you 10 of the things we love most about our new life here in Mexico. So I have been dreaming about being bilingual, about having a bilingual family for so many years. And it was pretty amazing to me that almost immediately after we moved here, our 6-year-old started speaking Spanish as if by magic. Everyone was telling us she's like a sponge, she's gonna learn right away, and she really did. And even I would consider myself conversational, and I'm getting better and better because when you're here, you have no choice but to hear Spanish all the time. You have no choice but to get out of your comfort zone and actually speak to people. And even our 3-year-old is starting to speak in Spanish. And obviously, when you're bilingual, there's brain health to consider, reduction of things like risk of dementia. But more than that, we really wanted our girls to have access to the Spanish-speaking world. There are over 20 Spanish-speaking countries. And once they have fluency in Spanish, they can connect with any of the people living in any of those countries. They can have careers anywhere in the Spanish-speaking world. They can have friends, they can have partners, they can have business ventures, all with any of the people living in those countries just because they speak Spanish. And in this day and age, with the globalization that we have, that is an invaluable asset that they're going to have going into adulthood. Mexico's food. So most everybody loves Mexican food. We've got tacos, you've got street corn, you've got pozole, you've got tamales, the list goes on and on. But one of the really cool things about Mexico is that when you go to each region has a specialty. And usually that specialty has a long history with that region. So the people there who prepare the food take a lot of pride in what they're making, and they're excited to share their food with you. So whether or not you're in Jalisco and you're trying tortas ahogadas, which are basically sandwiches that are doused in salsa, or they have a fermented drink called tejuino, or you could go to Baja and have fish tacos, which are basically beer-battered fresh fish tacos that are so delicious and refreshing in the hot weather that's over there. Or you can go to Oaxaca and have all the moles they have there. And you're tasting food that is steeped in culture and steeped in history. And the people who are preparing it typically have been preparing it for generations. And you can taste the authenticity when you're trying the food. Another thing I love about food here is the salsas, because pretty much every restaurant you go to is going to have fresh salsa that they make in-house, which means you're having delicious food with fresh salsa on top. Another great thing about the food, especially as a parent, is that wherever you go in Mexico, there are fresh fruit stands. So if your kid gets hungry while you're out and about, you could go and have them chop up fresh fruit right then and there for your kid. You're getting a fresh snack, and it's supporting a local person whose job it is literally to be there selling fruit to you. Usually the fruit is local, and this is especially great if you are raising vegetarian kids like we are, because pretty much wherever you go, you'll have a snack option. So a lot of people talk about the lower cost of living as a major benefit of moving to Mexico, and it's for a good reason. When we were living in California, my husband and I were both working well-paying, white-collar jobs, and still at the end of each month, we found ourselves wondering where all the money went, and we were having a hard time building a savings and actually doing anything related to building wealth for our kids or even saving for retirement because life was just so expensive there. And since we've been here, our cost of living has been cut by about half. And we live in a pretty expensive area. So if we lived in a lot of the rest of the country, our cost of living would be cut even more than that. The festivities. So in Mexico, a big part of the culture that I've noticed is just celebrating life. So whether it's someone's birthday or it's a holiday or it's just some reason to celebrate in the town, like the Saint's Day. Each town has a saint, and the saint has an associated day. So basically any excuse to celebrate, Mexicans are throwing some sort of big festivity in the town. And this is so much fun, especially as a parent with small kids, because there always seems to be something happening in the plaza that we can take our kids where they can actually enjoy throwing confetti, throwing flour, watching fireworks, listening to mariachi, and all of it's live. And there's just a a vibe in the culture here of celebration, of jubilance, of just enjoying yourself. And because the celebrations are so frequent throughout the year, they really keep the flow of life to be enjoyable because you work, you go to school, and then there's a festivity. If you haven't yet added Dia de Muertos to your bucket list, going to celebrate Day of the Dead in Mexico, you need to do that like now, because I cannot express to you how cool it is. People put up altars in front of their homes celebrating their departed loved ones. They put their favorite foods, they put their favorite items, whether it's running shoes or Coca-Cola or anything that was meaningful to the person whose life has been lost. And then they just stand by their altar and they're happy to share the lives of their loved ones with you, whether they were someone that was old and their life naturally ended, or if it was someone who died young. It's not a sad holiday, it's a happy holiday, and it makes teaching death to your kids something really approachable and really beautiful. And instead of death being this ending, your kids can see that we keep our ancestors alive by celebrating them. And so, as a parent, especially, this is a very special part of Mexican culture. And we actually made an altar in our home last year. And our kids got to see, oh, this was my uncle who died, who I had never seen, or this was my grandpa's mom. And they get to actually see their faces and get to know them, even though they've been gone for years. They're now living in the memories of kids who never before met them and yet somehow still feel akin to them because they get to see their face and celebrate their lives. Schooling is kind of like the work of kids, right? It's a big part of their life. And as parents, we want to give our kids the best schooling possible. And before we moved here, we were living in California, and our daughter was in a public school for kindergarten, and she was not thriving. She didn't love it. She didn't feel safe. She was going to the nurse's office every day, trying to get them to call us to come get her. She would hold our leg at the gate. And also, school has changed a lot since I was a kid and since my husband was a kid. Parental involvement is not really a hallmark of school anymore. Because of the violence that has been happening in schools in the United States, in general, the schools, at least in California, don't welcome the parents like they used to. And that was a hard truth for me to accept because I wanted to be a part of my kids' schooling career and experience, and we weren't wanted. We weren't welcome, actually. So, one of the things we were really looking forward to living in Mexico was the opportunities to have a higher level of education. And as an English speaking family, this is especially a benefit because a lot of the private schools here in Mexico are inherently bilingual because the Mexicans who can afford the private school want to learn English. So if you're coming into Mexico speaking English, your kids are going to have part of their day in English as well as Spanish. So it makes the transition a little bit easier for kids who are trying to learn Spanish. We actually went with a school that is 100% in Spanish. It wasn't a hard transition. It wasn't uncomfortable for them. And I think the kids are actually thriving and learning Spanish that much faster because of it. There's an emphasis on handicraft. They make bread. There's an emphasis on play and on singing. And it is a Waldorf school, so that's sort of Waldorf specific. But our kids run into school now. Like, they hardly look back, which is such a stark contrast to the kindergarten experience in California, where our 6-year-old would hold our leg and we would leave practically in tears after dropping her off. School has become a positive experience. School has become something that the kids feel safe in and look forward to. When they're sick, they want to go back instead of wanting to stay home an extra day. And as a parent, this is priceless. I think if this was the only life upgrade from living in California to living in Mexico, that alone would be worth it. All the other 9 items that we love on this list, we don't even need those. This alone is worth that much to us. So another thing I really love about living in Mexico is how safe I feel. So this might come as a surprise to some of you because in general, a lot of times when Americans think of Mexico, they don't think of safety. And there are things that happen here. There are institutions here that are corrupt and that cause problems, but for the average person living in Mexico, the way I feel at least is a lot safer than I did when I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. For one thing, I don't feel the constant fear of random acts of violence. So before, every time I went to a festival with my family, or we went to the movie theaters, or even at the grocery store, I used to find myself sort of picturing emergency escape routes and things like that, just because things happen in the States and you never really know where it's going to be. There's nowhere that you feel 100% safe at all times. On a small scale, I also feel there's been a reduction of crime in our life, because where we were living before, car break-ins, for example, was super common. In our neighborhood, it was pretty common to hear, "Oh, this person's car was broken into last night. Oh, that person's car was broken into last night." I had a friend whose car was broken into. She put it into the shop to get it fixed, and while her car was getting fixed, her rental car was broken into. So yes, okay, maybe these aren't life-threatening situations, but in general, it does add up to a feeling of general lack of safety. Another thing is pretty much every home where we used to live had a camera at their front door, because package theft was super common. Even now, when we order things and we send it to my dad's house, if he's not going to be there, I'll text the neighbor to grab it, because people steal. And even though, again, like I said, this isn't life-threatening, it does affect your quality of life when you're constantly having to think about your safety. Whereas here, when things happen in town, big things, everybody knows about it. People know who's involved, and in general, people talk. And because people are keeping an eye out for each other, it's really rare that things happen and nobody knows the details, because there's networks of people that communicate. And because people are so aware of what's going on in the community, this is sort of like a accountability system that is community based, and it makes you feel really bolstered actually by the community, because you know that people are keeping an eye out on each other, whereas before we didn't even know our neighbor's name, let alone their schedule or what they're doing. Here, people know, people look out for each other, people care about one another. It's part about being in a community based country, and in general, it actually makes me feel quite safe. And when you're going out into the plaza, it's very common to see kids running around. And me being from California, sometimes I'm looking, where's their parent? Are they okay? And the parents are totally unfazed, and it's just the norm here that kids can be kids without worrying about people in the community causing violence to them. Okay, on a lighter note, travel. So, my husband and I both love to travel, and it's something that we're very passionate about bringing to our parenting experience, is taking our kids around the world so that they can see other people, they can see other cultures, other foods, other languages, so that they can have a very wide idea of what the world has to offer, and so they can know just how much beauty there is out there to see in the world. And also, by the time they're adults, we want them to be able to pick and choose pieces of cultures, to pick what aligns with them instead of being confined by any one country's expectations on them. And so now that we're here and our budget, like I said, has been cut back so drastically, our travel budget has increased by, I don't know, threefold. We're able to plan trips abroad. We're able to plan trips that are a little more extravagant than before. And not only that, we're able to travel within Mexico to any climate we want. There's mountains, like I said, deserts, there's jungle, and all of it's within a couple-hour airplane ride. Another really special, unique part of traveling within Mexico is the Pueblo Mágico system. So Mexico has gone through the country and identified towns that are particularly charming, particularly special, and have designated them as a magic town, a Pueblo Mágico. And you can pull the list online. I think there's 177 of them. And you go and you can recognize a Pueblo Mágico because they have the name of their town written in a specific set of colorful letters. You often see people taking pictures with them. So the cost of travel within Mexico is also a lot more reasonable than you would expect. You can stay in an Airbnb, you can grab a hotel for the night at a really affordable price. The other day, my husband and I were feeling a little bit of cabin fever and thinking, oh, let's get out of here. And within an hour, we had packed our bags and left for the night to go stay in Guadalajara, where we got an amazing hotel in an old, used to be a hacienda. So it was a massive, beautiful building. And it was extremely affordable. We didn't even blink an eye at the cost. So this is a massive benefit to being in Mexico, again, related to travel, is that you can take day trips or small weekend trips for a very affordable price and start collecting all those memories with your family from traveling all around the country. Connecting with Mexican roots. Okay, so Mexico is so rich in culture. I wanted to come here so that our kids could fully grasp how special their lineage is, how special their ancestors are, and this land as a whole. Mexicans really celebrate and appreciate the land. This is something that Native people were really good at doing. For example, Pachamama, Mother Nature, is celebrated here. And so I wanted our kids to be able to come and actually get in touch with the culture, see the ruins from their ancestors, and make history come to life by actually visiting it and getting to know people and hearing stories, because the people who are living here have been living here for many, many, many generations. Whereas in the US, we have a sort of unique situation there that a lot of the people can usually track their ancestors back to another country within a few generations. Mexicans typically have been here for many years, and there's layers and layers and layers of culture built on that fact. And so already I feel our kids feeling more proud to be Mexican, knowing what Mexico means, knowing the differences between Mexico and the United States, and celebrating those differences. And this is really, really important to us. And also getting connected to their family here. There's cousins here. My in-laws, my mother and father-in-law are here. And the kids are doing things like making fresh tortillas with grandma and picking corn off grandpa's land and riding horses bareback. So we already have plans to take our kids to Chichen Itza. We already have plans to take our kids to Oaxaca. These places where history is really, really a part still of the day-to-day life. People are proud, people wear traditional garb, and people do traditional dances. And there's no better way to make history come alive for a kid than to see it in action. And the layers upon layers of cultural history that's built into it just creates a richness that's really hard to describe until you're actually here and you're experiencing it. The fact that the country as a whole is warm and is welcoming and is friendly, and people aren't rushing. And I think this is the biggest thing that's different for me coming from California. People are not in a rush here. People can be doing something. A stranger can be in the middle of doing something, and you can walk up to them and they will stop and they will turn and they will talk to you and they will find out what you need, and they will give you 10, 15 minutes of their time without making you feel that they're annoyed or frustrated or I don't know you. Why do I have to stop what I'm doing? I want to finish this so I can go home. This is something I used to feel all the time talking to strangers in California. And again, we are from Bay Area, so this is a very busy part of the United States. I don't know that all of the United States is like this, but this is very surprising to me that you come here and people are willing to give you their time without expecting anything back from you. So I was not expecting to be met with so much respect on my journey to speaking Spanish. I just expected to feel kind of silly sometimes speaking Spanish, and not a single time has a Mexican person made me feel inferior. Which this is especially surprising to me because when the situation is reversed and Mexicans are immigrating to America, they're not always greeted with that same respect. And so I had prepared myself to maybe feel out of place or unwelcome, and I haven't felt that way. Another cool thing about Mexican people is that they want to connect with you as a part of their community. Earlier today, the gardener in our community wasn't feeling well, and he came and he knocked on our door and asked my husband to take him home because he wasn't feeling well. We don't know him that well, but the expectation is we know each other, we're a part of the same community, can you help me? The other day we went to a nursery and our 3-year-old tripped and fell and scraped her hand, and it wasn't anything serious, but the woman who was working there, who apparently lived really close to the nursery, her first instinct was, oh, come to my house and let's wash her hand. I don't know her. I didn't even know her name, but her first instinct was to reach out and help us. It was like I see you, you're a mother, your daughter has fallen, how can I help you? And this sort of feeling of being a part of a community, of being seen by other people, is really hard to express how special it feels. And lastly, the slower pace of life. So since we moved down here, we have felt a massive shift of priorities. Suddenly, it doesn't matter what car we drive, it doesn't matter the clothes we wear, we just want to enjoy our life. We want to bake bread and make kombucha and take yoga together and teach our kids to swim. When we were living in California, we tried for about a year to get our kids in the pool and teach them how to swim. After coming here, within a month, my husband had taught our daughters to swim. There's just less pressure here to perform and achieve. It's more about enjoying life and being with family. And yes, we are privileged that we can be here as American immigrants, and we can use the United States dollar, the buying power that it brings and the privilege it brings, and buy a higher quality of life. And Mexicans here also enjoy life more than we were enjoying life in Silicon Valley. People work to live here, they don't live to work, whereas in the States, it felt the opposite. And it's really hard to express what it does to your nervous system when you get to actually start prioritizing having fun, enjoying your family, making memories, planning travel. I wasn't prepared for how I would feel once so many of the things that were on my plate would be removed. I feel that I now get to just live my life and exist and be with my family and not worry so much about the rat race and keeping up with the Joneses and worrying if I'm going to be able to make ends meet at the end of the month in terms of bills. Um, our life has improved dramatically. We're so happy here, and we feel that we're thriving and our kids are thriving, and it's all thanks to Mexico. So that completes our list of our 10 things that we love most about our life in Mexico. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching. This is our very first video, and this channel is going to be a space where we sort of document the highs and lows of life here as a family, our travels, things we like, things that we find challenging, as well as just documenting some of the things that we're passionate about in life. It might feel a little eclectic at times, but this is just sort of a space for us to be creative and share our lives and hopefully connect with some of you out there who these videos resonate with. See ya.